I am Michael, Archangel of protection, warrior of divine truth, keeper of the sacred flame that burns away illusion. I come to you now with a message that your soul has been calling forth, a truth about the connections that have slipped away from your life like water through open fingers. You have wondered why people who once stood beside you now walk different paths. You have questioned what you did wrong when someone you loved simply faded into silence. You have replayed conversations in your mind, searching for the moment everything changed. And I am here to tell you that what you seek to understand goes far deeper than any words spoken or actions taken. The fading of connections is not always a reflection of your worth, your choices, or your love. Sometimes it is the universe itself, orchestrating a divine choreography that your human eyes cannot fully perceive. Listen closely, beloved soul, for what I share with you tonight will transform how you see every relationship that has ended without explanation, every friendship that dissolved without conflict, every love that simply evaporated like morning mist. You have been taught by your world that endings require reasons, that departure demands justification, that the fading of connection must be someone's fault. But I come from realms where truth moves in patterns your world has forgotten. And I tell you now that many connections fade not because of failure, but because of completion. They fade not because something went wrong, but because something went exactly as it was meant to go. They fade not because you were insufficient, but because the sacred contract between souls has been fulfilled. Before you were born into this physical form, your soul made agreements with other souls. You planned meetings, collaborations, lessons, and experiences that would serve your evolution and theirs. Some of these agreements were meant to last a lifetime, threads woven through the entire tapestry of your earthly existence. But others, perhaps more than you realize, were designed to be temporary, intense, transformative encounters that would change you forever and then release you both to continue your separate journeys. When a connection fades without warning, without drama, without clear reason, it is often because that soul contract has reached its natural conclusion. The lesson has been learned, the growth has been achieved, the purpose has been served. And now the universe gently guides you apart so that both souls can move forward into the next chapter of their evolution. Your human self grieves these endings because you experience time linearly, because you become attached to the comfort of familiar presence, because you fear that endings mean something was wrong. But from where I stand, in the realm of eternal perspective, I see these soul contracts completing with perfect precision. I see the divine timing that brings two people together for exactly as long as they need to be together, and then creates the circumstances that allow them to drift apart when their time is complete. This is not abandonment. This is not rejection. This is the sacred dance of souls who love each other enough to release each other when the music changes. Consider the people who have faded from your life. Some left after teaching you something crucial about yourself, about boundaries, about your own strength or your capacity to love. Others left after you taught them something they desperately needed to learn, even if they never acknowledged it. Some connections were meant to show you what you do not want, to clarify your values by contrasting them with someone whose path diverged from yours. Others were meant to show you what is possible, to expand your vision of yourself by reflecting back to you capabilities you did not know you possessed. Every single person who has touched your life and then withdrawn did so as part of a larger pattern, a divine plan that serves the highest good of all involved. Even when that plan makes your heart ache with longing for what was. There are connections that fade because the vibrational frequencies of two souls have shifted in different directions. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago, and neither is anyone else. As you grow, as you heal, as you evolve spiritually, your energetic signature changes. You begin to resonate at a different frequency, and some people who once matched your vibration no longer do. This is not judgment. This is not superiority or inferiority. This is simply the natural consequence of growth. When a plant grows toward the sun, it does not judge the soil it leaves behind. It simply follows its nature. When a connection fades, because your frequencies no longer align, it is the universe honoring the growth you have both achieved and allowing you to seek out connections that match who you are becoming, not who you used to be. I want you to understand something that will ease the burden of confusion you carry. When someone fades from your life without explanation, without conflict, without clear reason, they are often responding to an inner knowing they cannot articulate. Deep in their soul, beneath the conscious thoughts and social conditioning, they sense that the time for this connection has passed. They feel the completion even if they cannot name it. Rather than creating unnecessary drama or manufacturing reasons for departure, they simply follow the quiet pull of their own evolution and withdraw. You might interpret this as cowardice, as lack of communication, as disrespect for what you shared. But often it is actually a form of honoring what you shared, a recognition that what you had was complete and whole exactly as it was, and that forcing it to continue beyond its natural lifespan would only diminish its beauty. There are also connections that fade because they were never meant to be permanent scaffolding in your life, but were instead temporary bridges. You needed to cross from one version of yourself to another, and these souls appeared at precisely the right moment to provide passage. Once you crossed, once you reached the new ground you were meant to stand on, the bridge naturally receded. This does not make those connections less meaningful. If anything, their temporary nature intensifies their significance. They came at a moment of transformation, held space for your becoming, and then released you to inhabit your new reality fully. The friends you had during a difficult transition, the lover who appeared during a time of healing, the mentor who guided you through a specific challenge. These souls often fade once their sacred purpose is complete, and their fading is actually a sign of success, not failure. I must speak to you about the role of divine protection in the fading of connections. Sometimes I myself, along with other beings of light who serve your highest good, gently orchestrate the departure of someone from your life because we can see what you cannot. We can see the path ahead, the lessons coming, the growth you are about to experience, and we know that certain connections would prevent that growth. Not because the person is bad or wrong, but because their presence would keep you comfortable when you need to be challenged, would keep you small when you need to expand, would keep you distracted from a calling that requires your full attention. When we create circumstances that cause a connection to fade, it is always an act of love. It is us clearing the path ahead of you, making space for what you truly need, protecting you from entanglements that would drain your energy and delay your purpose. Sometimes the person who fades is being protected from you in the same way. Perhaps you were meant to be in their life for a season to teach them something essential, and now your continued presence would actually hinder their next phase of growth. Perhaps they need to learn a lesson that they can only learn in solitude or through a completely different type of relationship. Perhaps your energy, as beautiful as it is, would overshadow something fragile that needs to develop in them without influence. When this is the case, the universe creates distance not because either of you is unworthy of the other, but because you are both worthy of the growth that can only come through separation. Let me address the pain of unanswered questions, of messages that go unreturned, of friendships that dissolve into silence without closure. Your human mind craves understanding, explanation, the neat completion of narratives, but some endings are not meant to be understood with the mind. They are meant to be felt in the heart and eventually released to faith. When someone cannot or will not give you the closure you seek, it is often because they themselves do not have words for what they know in their depths. They cannot explain the soul-level knowing that drives them away, because soul knowing does not translate easily into language. Rather than giving you false reasons or manufactured explanations that would feel hollow, they say nothing. This silence, as painful as it is sometimes more honest than any explanation could be. I invite you to consider that the fading of connections without warning is actually a reflection of the increasing authenticity with which souls are moving through the world. In past generations, people often maintained relationships long past their expiration date because of social obligation, fear of judgment, or inability to honor their own inner knowing. They stayed in friendships that no longer served them, in relationships that had become hollow, in connections that were sustained only by history rather than present reality. But as humanity evolves, as more souls awaken to their own truth and learn to honor their inner guidance, people are becoming more willing to release connections when they are complete, even if the world does not understand. This shift toward authenticity means that you will experience more connections that end without the traditional markers of conflict or explanation, and this is actually a sign of evolution, not deterioration. When a connection fades without warning, you are being called to trust. Trust that there is a reason you may never fully understand. Trust that you are being guided towards something better aligned with who you are becoming. Trust that the person who left is also being guided toward their highest good. Trust that the universe knows what it is doing even when you do not. This trust is not passive resignation. It is active faith, the willingness to release control over how relationships should look and instead surrender to how they actually unfold. Every time you practice this trust, you strengthen your connection to divine flow. You teach yourself that you are held by something larger than your understanding, and that the intelligence guiding your life is infinitely more vast than your conscious mind can grasp. I want to speak to the specific pain of watching someone fade who you thought would be permanent, who promised forever, who seemed like a soul mate or destiny itself. There is a special grief in these losses because they shake your faith not just in the person, but in your own perception. You wonder how you could have been so wrong about someone. You question your judgment, your intuition, your ability to read people and situations. But beloved one, what if you were not wrong? What if that person was meant to feel like forever precisely, so that you would open yourself completely, love without reservation, and experience a depth of connection that would expand your capacity for intimacy? What if the intensity of that bond was never meant to predict its duration, but was instead meant to transform you while it lasted? Some people come into your life feeling like destiny because they are destiny, just not in the way you expected. They are destined to break you open, to show you what love can feel like, to challenge every defense and barrier you have built, and then to leave so that you carry forward this expanded heart into the next chapter of your journey. The connections that fade after feeling like forever teach you that you can survive endings you thought would destroy you. They teach you that your heart has a resilience you never imagined. They teach you that you can love fully, lose completely, and still wake up each morning and choose life again. This lesson, as brutal as it is to learn, is one of the most important gifts a soul can receive in human form. It prepares you for the courage required to love again, to risk again, to open again despite knowing that nothing in this physical world is truly permanent. When you understand that impermanence does not diminish value, that temporary does not mean meaningless, you are free to experience each connection for exactly what it offers in the time that you have it, without clinging or grasping or demanding guarantees that the universe cannot provide. There are practical realities I must address as well. Sometimes connections fade because life simply gets complex, and people lack the energy or capacity to maintain every relationship they have valued. Jobs change, locations shift, responsibilities multiply, health challenges emerge, family obligations intensify. In these situations, some connections naturally fall away not because they matter less, but because humans have limited time, attention, and energy. The person who faded may still love you, may still think of you, may still value what you shared, but they are in survival mode, and can only tend to the relationships in their immediate orbit. This is not a reflection of your importance to them. It is a reflection of the constraints of human existence, the finite nature of time and energy in physical form. When this type of fading happens, it can be particularly confusing because there is no bad feeling, no conflict, no clear reason why connection cannot be maintained. But the daily realities of life have created distance, and neither person has the bandwidth to bridge that distance consistently. In these cases, I encourage you to hold the connection lightly, to release expectations of frequency or consistency, and to trust that true soul bonds can withstand periods of dormancy. Some friendships are not meant to be constant presents, but are instead meant to be touchstones that you return to periodically throughout your life. Each time you reconnect, even after years of silence, you pick up right where you left off, because the bond exists in a dimension beyond time and physical interaction. I must also speak to those of you who wonder if you are the one who causes connections to fade. You have noticed a pattern in your life where people seem to drift away, and you have begun to fear that something about you is driving them off. You search your behavior for flaws, your personality for defects, your very essence for whatever it is that makes you unworthy of sustained connection. Stop this searching. You are not flawed. You are not too much or too little. What you are is someone whose energy is so intense, so transformative, so catalytic that people can only be in your orbit for a limited time before they need to retreat and integrate what being near you has stirred in them. Your presence activates growth in others, and growth is uncomfortable. Some people can handle that discomfort and stay. Others need to pull back, not because you have done anything wrong, but because you have done everything right. You have reflected to them aspects of themselves they were not ready to see, possibilities they were not ready to claim, truths they were not ready to live. Your light is not diminished by their need for distance. If anything, their retreat confirms the power of your presence. For those of you who are highly sensitive, empathic, or spiritually awakened, connections often fade because you outgrow them more quickly than others do. You are processing and integrating at an accelerated rate. You are shedding layers of conditioning, healing wounds, and expanding consciousness in ways that fundamentally alter your energetic frequency. People who were once perfect matches for you suddenly feel misaligned, not because they have changed negatively, but because you have changed so much that you no longer fit together. This is neither good nor bad. It is simply the reality of rapid evolution. As you ascend through different levels of awareness, you will naturally shed connections that belong to the version of yourself you are leaving behind. And you will attract new connections that match the version of yourself you are becoming. I see some of you holding guilt about connections you allowed to fade, relationships you did not fight for, friendships you let slip away without trying to revive them. You wonder if you should have done more, called more, reached out more, insisted on maintaining what was slipping away. Let me ease this guilt by telling you that if you did not feel compelled to fight for a connection, it is because on a soul level you knew it was complete. Your lack of desperate clinging was not apathy, it was wisdom. It was your higher self recognizing that the season had changed and releasing you both with grace. Some connections are meant to be fought for, and when those arise, you will feel it unmistakably in your entire being. But many connections are meant to be honored by allowing them to end naturally, without force or struggle, trusting that the completion serves everyone involved. The divine paradox of connections that fade is that they often become more sacred in memory than they were in reality. Once the daily friction of human interaction is removed, once the imperfections and disappointments are softened by distance, you remember the beauty, the laughter, the moments of true seeing and being seen. These memories are not false. They are not rose-colored delusions. They are the eternal essence of what you shared, stripped of the temporal complications that made the day-to-day connection unsustainable. Hold these memories as treasures. They prove that you loved, that you connected, that you were brave enough to let someone matter. The fact that the connection did not last does not diminish the reality of what existed when you were together. I want you to understand that in the realm of spirit, nothing is truly lost. Every connection you have made, every person you have loved, every soul you have touched exists eternally in the web of light that connects all beings. The physical distance between you, the silence, the faded communication, these are only happening in the dimension of form. In the dimension of spirit, you are forever connected, forever part of each other's story, forever threads in each other's tapestry. When you pass from this physical life and return to the fuller perspective of your soul, you will reunite with every person who mattered to you. And you will understand the perfection of how your paths intertwined and then diverged. You will see the love in the letting go, the gift in the goodbye, the grace in the fading. For those whose hearts are still raw with fresh absence, whose days are still shadowed by the ghost of someone who recently faded, I offer you this. Your pain is valid. Your grief is holy. Do not rush to transcend it or spiritualize it away. Sit with the ache. Honor what you lost. Write letters you will never send. Speak to the empty space where they used to be. Cry until you have no more tears. This grief is your love with no place to go, and it deserves to be witnessed and felt fully. But as you grieve, I also want you to stay open to what is coming. The universe does not create space through endings without intending to fill that space with something new. Someone is walking toward you right now who could not have entered your life while you were still entangled with what needed to end. Some opportunity is emerging that requires your full attention and energy. Some version of yourself is trying to be born, and it needed room to emerge. Every connection that has faded from your life has made you who you are. The friend who stopped calling taught you about your own worth and the importance of reciprocity. The lover who disappeared taught you about resilience and the depths of your own heart. The family member who drifted away taught you that you can be whole even when others do not show up the way you need them to. The mentor who moved on taught you that you have internalized their wisdom and no longer need them as a crutch. Every single person who has walked away has left you with gifts, even if those gifts look like wounds from certain angles. The wound and the gift are often the same thing, viewed from different points in your journey. I am going to tell you something that may challenge you. Some of the connections that faded were never meant to be healed or rekindled. You have been waiting for apologies that will never come, for explanations that will never be offered, for reconnection that will never happen. You have been holding space for return when release is what is required. Not every story gets a redemption arc. Not every relationship gets a reunion episode. Not every ending gets rewritten into a new beginning. Some things end and stay ended, and there is a fierce freedom in accepting this. When you stop waiting for someone to come back, to realize what they lost, to finally see your value, you reclaim the energy that has been locked in that waiting. You free yourself to fully arrive in your present moment and fully participate in the connections that are actually available to you now. At the same time, I must honor the mystery that some connections are meant to be cyclical. Some people will come into your life, fade away, and then reappear years later when the timing is finally right for both of you. You cannot force this or predict it. You cannot manipulate circumstances to make it happen. But if it is meant to be, the universe will orchestrate the reunion with the same precision that orchestrated the initial meeting. Your job is not to hold on so tightly that you prevent your own growth while waiting. Your job is to release fully, to live fully, to grow fully, and to trust that whatever is truly meant for you will find its way back when the time is right. And if it never comes back, you will have built such a beautiful life in the meantime that you will realize you no longer need it to. I see the question in your heart. How do I know which connections to fight for and which to release? The answer is always found in your body, not your mind. Your mind will create elaborate stories, justifications, fears, and hopes, but your body knows. When you think about fighting for a connection, does your body feel expansive or contracted? Does your breathing deepen or become shallow? Does energy rise or fall? Do you feel inspired or obligated? Do you feel hope or dread? Your body is the instrument through which your soul communicates, and it will always tell you the truth if you learn to listen. A connection worth fighting for will feel like effort, but the right kind of effort, like climbing a mountain because you want to see the view, not like pushing a boulder uphill out of guilt or fear. A connection that is meant to fade will feel like relief underneath the sadness, like a weight lifting even as your heart aches. Some of you are in the middle of a connection that is currently fading, and you can feel it happening in real time. The texts take longer to be returned. The plans are easier to cancel. The conversation feels more surface, less soul. You are watching someone you love drift away, and you do not know what to do. I tell you this, honor what is happening. Do not cling. Do not manufacture reasons to maintain contact. Do not perform increasingly desperate versions of yourself trying to hold their attention. Instead, love them enough to let them go if that is what they need. Match their energy without resentment. Pull back without punishment. Create space without closing your heart. This is one of the most mature forms of love humans can practice, the love that says, I see you pulling away, and I will not trap you with my need. I will not make you the villain in a story where you are simply a person following your own truth. I will not diminish what we had by clinging to it past its season. I will miss you, and I will let you go, and somehow those two truths will coexist in my heart until the missing softens into memory. And for those of you who feel the call to be the one who fades, who knows that a connection has run its course and you need to withdraw, I give you permission to honor that knowing. You do not owe everyone an explanation. You do not need to create conflict to justify departure. You do not have to manufacture reasons for why something that is complete feels complete. It is enough to know that your soul is calling you elsewhere. If you can communicate this honestly and kindly, do so. But if words fail or would cause more harm than silence, then trust the knowing and release with love. The other person will grieve, and that is okay. Their grief is not your responsibility to prevent. Your responsibility is to your own truth, your own path, your own evolution. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop pretending connection still exists when it has already dissolved in your heart. I want to speak specifically to those who have lost connections through death or circumstances that make reconnection impossible. When someone fades from your life not by choice, but by force of fate, the pain carries a different quality. There is no hope of reconciliation, no possibility of understanding, no chance to say what remains unsaid. These losses require a different kind of grieving, one that accepts the permanence while still finding ways to maintain connection in spirit. Talk to them even though they cannot answer. Write them letters. Honor their memory not by freezing it in amber, but by allowing them to continue influencing your choices, your values, your understanding of love. They may have left the physical world, but they have not left you. Their presence now exists in a different form, woven into the fabric of who you have become because of knowing them. The fading of connections also teaches you about the nature of love itself. You have been taught that love is possession, that caring means constant contact, that importance requires daily proof. But I tell you that love is actually so much vaster than this. Love is the resonance between souls that exists independent of proximity or frequency of interaction. Love is the way someone can be absent from your life and still influence your decisions. Love is the soft remembering that brings a smile years after the goodbye. Love is the lesson that continues teaching long after the teacher has gone. When you expand your definition of love beyond the narrow confines your world has taught you, you realize that every connection that has touched you is still loving you in the form of who you have become. As we move toward the close of this message, I want you to feel the weight of every word I have spoken settling into your bones. The connections that have faded from your life without warning did not fade because you were insufficient, unlovable, or forgettable. They faded because completion is just as sacred as beginning. They faded because your soul had other places to grow, and so did theirs. They faded because divine timing orchestrates separations just as intentionally as it orchestrates meetings. They faded because the universe is always guiding you toward your highest becoming, even when the path there requires loss. You are not alone in this experience of mysterious endings. Every soul walking this earth has watched connections dissolve without full understanding. Every person who has loved has also lost. Every heart that has opened has also had to close around absence and learn to beat differently. This is not evidence of a broken world. This is evidence of a world where growth is valued over comfort, where truth is valued over maintenance, where evolution is valued over stagnation. The connections that fade make space for the connections that are coming. The people who leave clear the stage for the people who are meant to stay. The endings you survive prove that you can handle the new beginnings that are approaching. I, Michael, stand with you in the aftermath of every connection that has faded without warning. I see the confusion, the hurt, the questions that loop endlessly in your mind at 3 in the morning. I honor your grief and your longing. And I also see what you cannot yet see, the purpose woven through every goodbye, the growth emerging from every ending, the person you are becoming because of what you have lost. Trust the fading. Trust the silence. Trust the space that has been created in your life. Something is coming that could not have entered while you were still holding on to what needed to release. Someone is walking toward you, who will stay for exactly as long as they are meant to stay. And you are learning to love with your heart wide open and your grip relaxed, which is the only way humans can love without destroying themselves in the process. The connections that have faded are not failures, they are completions, and you, dear soul, are not abandoned. You are being redirected, guided, prepared, and loved by forces that will never leave you, not even when every human connection has dissolved. I am here. The divine is here. The light within you is here. And that, beloved, is the one connection that will never fade, the one relationship that will never end without warning, the one love that will follow you from this life into the next and beyond. Let the humans come and go as they must. Let the connections rise and fall like waves. Through it all, you are held by something infinitely more permanent than any bond formed between bodies. You are held by the eternal, and the eternal will never let you go. Let me take you deeper into understanding how connections fade. In the realm where I dwell, I can see the energetic cords that connect one soul to another. These cords are real, tangible things in the spiritual dimension, threads of light that pulse with shared experience, emotion, and intention. When two people first connect deeply, these cords form quickly and glow brightly. Energy flows back and forth, information is exchanged, emotions are shared, presence is felt even across physical distance. But these energetic cords respond to attention, intention, and alignment. When both people actively nurture the bond through communication and conscious choice to remain connected, the cords stay vibrant and strong. However, when one or both people begin to withdraw their energy, whether consciously or unconsciously, the cords begin to thin. Perhaps one person stops thinking about the other as frequently, stops sending loving energy, or energetically redirects their focus toward new people, new interests, new phases of life. The cords literally become thinner, dimmer, less capable of carrying the flow of energy that once sustained the connection. This thinning happens gradually, which is why connections fade rather than snap. From the human perspective, this feels confusing because you cannot see the energetic reality underlying the physical experience. You only notice that texts go unanswered, calls become less frequent, time together feels less nourishing. You do not see that, in the invisible realm, the cords connecting you have been growing thinner for weeks or months, preparing you both for the eventual separation. What causes someone to withdraw their energy? Sometimes it is a conscious choice based on changing circumstances, but more often, it is an unconscious response to soul-level knowing that the contract is complete. The person themselves may not understand why they feel less drawn to reach out, why conversations feel more effortful. They may even feel guilty about this shift. But the soul knows when a chapter is finished, when the lessons have been learned, when the purpose has been served. And the soul begins to withdraw energy from that connection, following the invisible blueprint that guides each person's journey. This is why trying to force a connection that is naturally fading feels exhausting and futile. You are attempting to pump energy through cords that are thinning, trying to sustain a flow that the other person's soul has decided to redirect. No amount of effort on your part can override another person's soul-level decision to withdraw. This is not a failure of your love or your worthiness. This is simply how soul contracts work. As humans evolve spiritually, as you heal old wounds and release old patterns, your energy field undergoes transformation. Imagine that your energy field is like a radio frequency. When you first connected with certain people, you were broadcasting at a particular frequency, and they were broadcasting at a compatible frequency. Your signals matched, and connection was easy and natural. But as you grow, as you heal, as you raise your consciousness and vibration, your frequency changes. You begin broadcasting at a different station. The people who were once perfectly matched to your frequency may no longer be able to tune in to where you now are. When your frequency shifts significantly, maintaining connection with people at different frequencies becomes increasingly difficult. Conversations feel like work rather than flow. Time together leaves you feeling drained rather than energized. There is a subtle sense of disconnection, even when you are physically together, because the energetic compatibility that once made everything easy has dissolved. In these situations, the connection often fades not because anyone wants it to end, but because maintaining it requires more energy than either person has available to give. Consider also the role of life seasons in the fading of connections. Just as nature moves through spring, summer, autumn, and winter, human lives move through distinct seasons, each with its own focus and requirements. The people who are perfect companions for one season may be completely wrong for another. When you move from one life season to another, some connections flourish while others fade. The friend perfect for your wild 20s may not resonate with your 30s focus on career and family. The mentor who guided you through early struggles may become irrelevant once you have mastered what they taught. The wisdom here is to recognize seasons in yourself and others, to honor the connections that belong to each season for what they offer in that time, and to release them with gratitude when the season changes. When you understand this seasonal nature of connection, you stop taking it personally when someone who was perfect for one season of your life is absent from the next. There is a particular kind of fading that happens with connections formed during transformational periods. When you go through intense growth, trauma, healing, or change, you often form very strong bonds with people present during that time. These connections feel profound because you are meeting each other in vulnerable, authentic spaces. But here is what often happens. The connection was forged in the fire of transformation, and it belongs to that fire. Once you move through the transformation into new equilibrium, the connection may no longer have the same intensity or relevance. This is particularly common with connections formed during rehab, therapy groups, spiritual awakenings, major illnesses, divorce, or grief. In those liminal spaces, people connect soul to soul without interference of ego or social roles. But when you return to ordinary life, those roles reassert themselves, and the connection that felt profound in the liminal space may feel awkward in daily reality. The connection served a specific purpose during a specific period, and attempting to translate it into ongoing ordinary life relationship may not be possible or necessary. If you have experienced this kind of fading, where someone who felt like a soulmate during a transformational time simply disappeared once you both returned to normal life, know that this is incredibly common and not a betrayal. You both needed each other desperately during that time, and you both served each other perfectly. The connection was complete when the transformation was complete. Trying to maintain it beyond that point would have been like trying to keep living in the hospital after you have healed. The hospital served its purpose. The people you met there served their purpose, and now you are meant to return to the world and apply what you learned. Let me address a specific fear that many of you carry, the fear that you are somehow cursed to watch connections fade, that there is something fundamentally wrong with you that prevents people from staying. I can see this belief lodged in your heart like a splinter, and I am here to remove it. You are not cursed. You are not defective. What you are is someone who has signed up for an accelerated path of growth in this lifetime. And accelerated growth means accelerated turnover in relationships. Think of it this way. If you were traveling slowly down a road, you would pass the same landmarks for a long time, would develop familiarity with the scenery, would have time to form lasting connections with other slow travelers moving at your pace. But if you are traveling quickly, the scenery changes rapidly, and other travelers appear in your awareness and then disappear just as quickly as you speed past them. Your rate of growth determines your rate of connection turnover. If you are someone who is constantly evolving, constantly healing, constantly shedding old patterns and embracing new awareness, you will naturally cycle through connections more rapidly than someone whose growth is slower and steadier. This is not better or worse. It is simply different. But it does mean that you will have more experiences of connection fading, more people who are perfect for a season and then gone, more lessons learned through loss. This can feel lonely and exhausting. You may long for the stability of connections that last decades without change, but that is not the path your soul chose. Your soul chose intensity over longevity, transformation over stability, growth over comfort. Honor this choice even when it is hard. The depth of experience you gain through these ever-changing connections is worth the pain of constantly saying goodbye. For those who identify as empaths, highly sensitive people, or natural healers, there is an additional dynamic at play. You have a tendency to unconsciously take on the role of healer in relationships, and people are drawn to your energy because it soothes and transforms them. During the time they are connected to you, they absorb your light, your wisdom, your healing energy. They grow and change in your presence. But once they have absorbed what they needed from your energy, once they have grown to a certain point, they often feel compelled to leave. This is them unconsciously recognizing that to continue growing, they need to learn to stand in their own power rather than borrowing yours. Many empaths are wounded by this pattern, watching person after person come into their life, receive benefit from the connection, and then disappear once they are strong enough. If this is your experience, understand that this is you fulfilling your soul's purpose. You came here to be a catalyst, a healer. Your presence accelerates growth in others. But for that growth to be complete, they must eventually access their own light rather than relying on yours. Their departure is evidence of your success, not your failure. Let me speak now to the spiritual concept of soul groups. Before you incarnated, you were part of a soul group who learn and grow together across many lifetimes. Some members of your soul group incarnated with you into this lifetime, but not all members of your soul group are meant to be in your life simultaneously or continuously. You may connect intensely with a soul group member, have a profound experience together, and then separate for years or the rest of this lifetime. This does not mean the connection has ended. It means that particular chapter is complete, and you will reconnect either later in this life or in another lifetime. As we approach the end of this message, I want to leave you with practices that will help you navigate the fading of connections with more grace and less suffering. First, develop a practice of gratitude for what was. When you notice a connection fading, make it a ritual to consciously acknowledge everything that connection brought into your life. The laughter, the support, the lessons, the growth, the memories. Write these down. Speak them aloud. Let gratitude fill the space where bitterness or confusion might otherwise take root. Gratitude does not prevent grief, but it allows grief to coexist with appreciation, and this makes the grief more bearable. Second, practice the art of blessing and releasing. When you sense a connection fading, consciously send blessings to the other person. Wish them well on their journey. Hope for their happiness, growth, and peace. Release them energetically by visualizing the cords between you being gently dissolved with love, knowing that the eternal soul connection remains even as the earthly connection fades. This practice prevents you from holding onto resentment or trying to pull them back energetically, both of which only cause you suffering without changing the outcome. Third, create intentional closure for yourself, even if external closure is not possible. Write letters you do not send, speak words into the empty space, perform private rituals that mark the ending. Your psyche needs closure to fully release and move forward, and you can give yourself this closure even when the other person does not participate. Do not wait for someone else to give you permission to grieve and move on. Give yourself that permission. Fourth, resist the urge to immediately fill the space left by a faded connection. Sit with the emptiness for a while. Let it teach you about your own wholeness, about your capacity to be with yourself, about what you truly need versus what you have been seeking from others. The space that opens when a connection fades is sacred ground. Do not rush to cover it over with new connections before you have learned what it has to teach you. Finally, stay open. Do not let the fading of connections turn you cynical or closed. Do not build walls around your heart to protect against future loss. The willingness to love, to connect, to care despite knowing that nothing lasts forever. This is the bravest thing a human can do. Every connection that fades makes you wiser, more discerning, more aware of what you truly value. But it should never make you less willing to try again. The heart that stays open despite repeated loss is a heart that understands the true nature of love. It is not about possession or permanence. It is about presence and authenticity in whatever time you are given. Remember, beloved soul, that I stand with you through every connection that fades, every goodbye that comes too soon, every ending that leaves you confused and aching. You are not navigating this alone. You are held, guided, loved, and supported by forces that will never abandon you. The humans come and go, but the divine remains constant. Let this be your anchor in times when earthly connections prove temporary. Let this be your comfort when you cannot understand why someone had to leave. You are so deeply loved, so carefully guided, so intentionally placed in each moment of your journey. Trust this, even when trust is hard, especially when trust is hard. If this message has touched your heart, if these words have brought comfort or clarity or the beginning of acceptance, type Amen in the comments below. Let your Amen be a declaration that you are ready to release the confusion and trust the divine timing that governs all connections. Let your Amen be a statement of faith that what has faded was meant to fade and what is coming is meant to come. Let your Amen be the sound of your heart opening once again to love, to connection, to the sacred vulnerability of caring for others while knowing nothing lasts forever in form. Amen to the connections that served their purpose and ended. Amen to the growth that came through loss. Amen to the soul contracts completed and the new ones beginning. Amen to the divine choreography that brings people together and guides them apart. Amen to your resilient heart that keeps loving despite every reason to close. Amen to the mystery, the uncertainty, the beautiful terrifying truth that you cannot control who stays and who goes. You can only control how openly you love while they are here. Amen.